It's
Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is my friend Charlotte Dennett. And Charlotte and I are going to talk about things that have happened in the news since we last spoke. So, Charlotte, I think what's going on is totally unprecedented. What do you think?
Well, yeah, it is totally. And you know, there's the initial euphoria for most people in the Democratic Party or people who wanted Biden to step down. That would include me. I mean, I felt great relief when he did that, and I feel quite positive about Kamala Harris, given the situation that she's put
Right.
in. Um, but I'm also fearful. I mean, the Trump people, they were caught off guard. They're angry, and now they're going to start viciously attacking Harris, and they've already started doing it
Mhm.
and lying about her. I have confidence in her, but I worry about her. I worry about her safety, quite frankly. You know, and then there's these hearings that are going on with regard to the assassination attempt, and I don't see that. I'm not seeing that going away. So increasingly, the Republicans are going to blame the Biden administration, which is understandable because the Biden administration was control over the Secret Service. So they're having hearings about that now. There's going to be more special investigations. So when we hear the talking heads on TV say that it's going to be a tough road, I think it will be a tough road, even though um, she's got her delegates in line and moving forward very, very smoothly and professionally so far. But oh God, I think the rocky road is still ahead of us.
So, my first question is the Democrats denied for so long that Biden was ill. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's very clear. I think that is ultimately what did him in, if you like, because it was coming out that they saw his decline before the debate and were really, really worried about it. And so, what his team did is they shielded him and they prevented him from doing a whole lot of public events. I mean, that happens. That happened with FDR in his wheelchair for a while.
Right.
I mean, you anticipate that they're going to do that. The fact of the matter is, though, it all caught up on that fateful debate day, and then after that, it was over for him. A lot of people foresaw it. There are some people who fought it, and that's an interesting thought. When AOC came out and said, we still want Biden because there is a move by some people who want to get rid of both him and Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
So her concern was that Kamala would not get the nomination. And I think there were people that were against both of them, but they would have been more, shall we call it, moderates. Um, and then there's the whole Gaza situation, if you care to talk about that, because that was playing behind the scenes too.
Mm-hmm. But before we get involved with any kind of foreign affairs, share your thoughts about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
Well, the hearings are going on now,
Right.
and I've read that there are a lot of people, maybe particularly on the left, think it was staged. And I have to say, when I watched it, I found it very disturbing. I mean, but it's hard to come up with an explanation. One person said, "Oh, come on, Trump is not that courageous to allow a 20-year-old shooter to nick him on the side of the head in the hopes that it doesn't penetrate. I mean, that's the problem with the stage theory, unless someone can come up with a coherent explanation of how that exactly happened. So, but just that it was very unusual, as Secret Service people have testified. They should have seen the guy. There were warnings, wait plenty of time in advance of the guy on the roof. Nothing was done. And they let him get up after he was shot. They let him stand up, and they still were not absolutely sure there wasn't another shooter. So that was not typical. And what did he do when he stand up? He just fight, fight, fight. Oh my God.
Mhm.
Anyway, and of course they've used this to their advantage. They've turned Trump into a martyr, and as a gift from God, saved by God. I mean, it's an incredible story. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of the investigation. But as you know, when there's an assassination or an assassination attempt, it takes months and years to get down to who was really responsible. But I mean, the Republicans, understandably, are accusing the Biden administration of providing lax security. And now the Secret Service director has just resigned under pressure. Why was she withholding so much information? I mean, there's something very fishy, but it's an assassination attempt, so of course it would be fishy. We don't know the motive. We don't know who was behind him. We know the father got the gun. But beyond that, I guess he had some training in sharpshooting, but the whole issue of not protecting that building is huge. Who ultimately, what person or individuals were ultimately responsible? I don't know if they've identified the person yet. I haven't been able to watch all the hearings, but you know, the conspiracy theories are going to keep flying. The anger over the administration is going to escalate. Uh, I worry about Kamala's safety. I don't know if I'm the first person to say it, but I'm sure many other people are thinking it.
Mhm.
So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. What are
So
your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
my thoughts are, I got a text message from a friend of mine stating um that Trump was just shot, and I put and that the gunman kind of missed his mark a little bit. And it's amazing how close Trump came to death. I mean, it was like maybe less than an inch.
Yeah, really.
So,
And a lot of people privately express their thoughts about, like, why didn't it, why did it miss by that much? You know what I mean. It,
right, right.
anyway,
The one
um,
thing I find very interesting is the fact that the shooter, and it was, I mean, given our age, Charlotte, the guy was just a young kid. He was 20 years old.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, um, instead of killing him, they could have just maimed him, and and maybe some truth would come out,
yeah.
but maybe the powers that be don't want the truth to come out right now.
Well, surely whoever's behind it don't want it to come out for sure.
Right,
But that reminds us of killing Jack Ruby ultimately, and Oswald,
right,
before in the Kennedy assassinations.
right,
And there were real problems with the social Secret Service in that case as well. So
right, right.
all we can watch. I think it's important to watch carefully. Oh my God, the dog. Anyway, yeah. Shall I
Maybe
tell the
your
dog to shut up?
maybe your dog wants to be on the video.
No. Let me stop now. Okay. I think I know what that was about.
So, um, what's your opinion of J.D. Vance?
Uh, a slick opportunist. But
Okay.
then some people say all politicians are slick opportunists, but some are worse. And he
Uh-huh.
is the worst. No, he's disgraceful because he was on to Trump. You know, he knew all of Trump's flaws
Uh-huh.
and he put him out there. And then he did this complete turnaround once big money from Silicon Valley started coming into him, and he was groomed. So now that he's a millionaire, you know, he came from humble beginnings. Great story. I read the eulogy story, hillbilly eulogy, 3 years ago, and thought it was, you know, quite insightful. Um, and in those days, he was a liberal, but now he's, you know, put his finger to the wind and come out with a ultra right-wing comments, which now has the Trump people worried. I mean, the
Right.
twists and turns of this election, it's
Right.
just crazy. And I sort of see the whole world is sort of aghast and fascinated. What's going to happen next? I mean, they
But
can't get rid of Vance now. My hunch was they had finally concluded that Biden was staying in, so they could put Vance in there, a man. But had it been Kamala, then they might have put a woman as the vice president, and so they're pissed off that the Democrats pulled a fast one on them. They even want to threaten a lawsuit. Oh, so it goes.
Mhm. But I never saw anything this bizarre in all the years I've been watching politics. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's all totally bizarre, and you know they talk abroad about the chaos, and then on top of it all, Netanyahu's coming
Right.
into Washington. He's here now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole other dimension of the Biden stepping down. If you want to talk about it, I have
Sure,
a few
let's
thoughts
talk
on that.
about it.
Okay, well, it was a few days ago, I think it was on Democracy Now, that a leader, her Sansor is her last name. I can't think of her first name, but she's she's a truth teller on difficult issues, including the Middle East. And I think she runs a nonprofit that's for peace in the Middle East. I'm sorry I didn't get her exact bio, but she came out and said that the real story about Biden stepping down was the fact that he was losing a lot of support in the crucial swing states. Michigan, especially, which has a huge Arab American community and has forcefully condemned the Biden administration for being complicit in genocide. So there was that issue, she said, that it was well known that he'd lost a lot of key voting blocks, young people, and the Arab American community, and in these swing states. So Kamala coming in, she's, I think, wisely boycotting his address to Congress. But she's got to deal with him. She's got to meet with him later. I think she'll be tougher on him. The one thing that makes her palatable to the younger generation who are horrified over the genocide in Gaza is that she was very empathetic to the suffering of the Palestinians. She showed it and she talked about it and she was horrified by it much more than Biden. Which raises the question of not only why has Biden been more tolerant, even though, you know, trying to pressure Netanyahu for a ceasefire, but then that gets us to the end game of the war in Gaza. Do you want to touch on that?
Of
Because
course.
they're all going to have to deal with it.
Of
Right
course.
now,
Yes.
in the next 2 or 3 days, they should be dealing with the Gaza war. And not only its impact on US foreign policy, but where it's all headed. And just as Linda Sansour, I think I have it right, said that the media had totally censored out the backstory of Biden's handling of Gaza as being largely responsible for stepping down when he did. That's one area. And the other one is energy, that is constantly censored out of the media. Hold on. And so that's where my book comes in, by the way. If I might say that I am the author of this book, Follow the Pipelines, in which I trace the role of pipelines in throughout the Middle East, beginning in 47, when my father was trying to determine the route of the Trans-Arabian pipeline. And I discovered how monumental that was, and how protecting it, both militarily and economically, was crucial to the post-war era, and full of intrigue. And then my father died in a plane crash right after he did that. America's first master spy dies in a plane crash after a visit to Saudi Arabia. Anyway, so looking into his death, then I trace the whole history of pipeline politics and pipelines in the endless wars. And so that gets us to Gaza. Let's go right up to the present. There's
Okay.
$500 billion worth of natural gas and oil off the coast, the Mediterranean coast, the Eastern Mediterranean. And a lot of it is should belong to the Gazans. It's called the Gaza Marine, and a huge amount is owned by Israel and some by Lebanon. And there had been two previous assaults on the Gaza, much less vicious, but still horrific. One in 2009 and the other in 2014. And as I write in my book, the whole purpose was to prevent the Palestinians from getting ownership over the Gaza basin natural gas and oil, because they're trying to wipe them out. They don't want them to get their own economic benefits from exploiting that natural gas. They argued the money would go to terrorism and not to bringing peace. That's in my book. But since then, we need some updating. And I think that the end game is a huge project. And it's to develop that Eastern Mediterranean. I mean, Kushner's already come out and said it. There'd be some great hotel resorts going in there. Well, also what they want to put in there is a pipeline infrastructure that's going to carry this energy to Europe, which desperately needs it because of the Ukraine war, because their access to cheaper Russian oil was curtailed due to the sabotage of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So that created yet another foreign policy crisis for Biden, and yet you seldom hear it in the analysis. And as I've always said, the reason for that is that oil remains the fuel of the military. There's anyone who wants to keep up as a superpower has to control the oil and is always on the lookout for new sources of oil. And we can extend that now to natural gas and its importance to industry. And so the great game, that's what I call it, is still off and running. It's still on steroids right now. The war in Ukraine is I just lost it. Wait a minute. The war in Ukraine, I said right in the beginning, is could be the mother of all energy wars, and I still stand by that. They don't talk about it. That's unfortunate.
But when they talk about the war in Ukraine from the standpoint of what we hear on the news in the United States, it's to make or keep Ukraine a democracy. So all that stuff is baloney as far as you're concerned.
Well, they always argue it, don't they? They always say we're going in this for democracy. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, do they take us for idiots? I mean, yes, it's much more than that. We all know that.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, you got to look at the history, you got to look at the context, and the thing that's not mentioned is that Ukraine has the second largest oil and gas reserves in Europe, next to Russia, if you want to consider Russia part of Europe. And the most valuable deposits are, guess where? In the eastern region, in the Donbass, where all the fighting is happening right now. So I understand the arguments that Putin is no Democrat. Let's face that. I mean, he's a total autocrat. So they can argue it's a war for democracy if they want, but there are more things involved in this war. They argue that if he's not stopped, he'll hit Poland and he'll hit other neighboring countries. But on the other hand, the argument is now largely recognized that there was huge pressure to keep encroaching on Russian territory militarily, despite promises when the Soviet Union dissolved. Was promised that they wouldn't move an inch, and that was broken. And you can go into the 2014 coup that was sponsored by the United States to get rid of the Russian-leaning president, and that was that created the whole Maidan revolt in 2014. And one thing that Putin did immediately afterwards, I think he saw the writing on the wall, and one of the first things he did is invade Crimea. Well, I have a map in my book that shows Crimea situated on the Black Sea, which is also swimming in huge deposits of oil and natural gas, as is the Caspian Sea. So all these different wars that are going on now are, in my humble opinion, are fueled by energy. And yeah, you can deal with all the different ethnic groups and historical battles between them, but the people who are ultimately profiting from all of this, the oil companies and the military contractors that are supplying all the hardware to protect these vital assets. They're making out like bandits. And I've had a conversation with one energy specialist who said they won't stop at anything. They don't care if they pull off a coup or commit human rights violations or genocide or assassinate leaders. There's nothing that's stopping them, and it's still going on tragically. Oh my God, it's horrible.
So the presidential campaign, from your perspective, it's not going to touch what you just said, right?
No, it can't avoid it. Now, it hasn't touched it. It never came up when everyone was speculating that Biden would have to step down. It never came up, and the link to his losing popularity in those key states, battleground states, that was not brought up. But now that Netanyahu is in the United States, it's unavoidable. They're certainly going to have to talk about how how Kamala Harris is going to have to deal with him. And it's very tricky for her. I think her heart is in the right place, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on her to, you know, tread carefully. I would put it that way. And let's face it, I mean, this is a very volatile area. Everyone's worried about a new nuclear war. I mean, someone could just make a mistake. And God help us,
Right.
I know there are an awful lot of people, including Scott Ritter, by the way, that are rightfully very worried that we are on the precipice of a nuclear war.
That's pretty frightening. One time I had told Scott, I thought of a new slogan. It's
What?
not it's not 1944 anymore. 1945 was the line in the sand. That was the year that nuclear power, the nuclear war became known to the world, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
So
Right.
what happens from 1945 on, there's been the threat of nuclear war. And throughout human history, that's never been, I mean, there's been wars, but maybe it's been isolated. Now we're talking about the entire destruction of the whole world, which is really frightening.
Yeah, totally. And not only that, but there are a lot of other countries now that want nuclear weapons. And Saudi Arabia, for instance, has been clamoring for the right to develop its own nuclear power. And it always starts with the domestic generating stations, always starts there. But meanwhile, they can figure out how to clandestinely start working, developing a bomb despite all sorts of safeguards. And that gets into the end game again, because there's a big security deal that was discussed, not only security, but development deal with the Biden administration and with Saudi Arabia and some of the other oil kingdoms in the area. And they're all clamoring for nuclear power, specifically Saudi Arabia. So that has many people worried. And like I say, the other end game is just the development of that whole area that's now being wiped out deliberately. We've all got the statements from the right wingers in the Netanyahu administration that they want to wipe Gaza off the face of the map. And Jared Kushner this spring came out and said, when he was asked at a Harvard gathering, that it's time to finish the job. They've got big plans for the area. He doesn't see a Palestinian state in the mix. And once this is all part of the Abraham Accords, which the Biden administration took up, and they still want to do it. And that's, of course, what prompted the Hamas assault on October 7th, because they could see what was going on. All the concerns for a state of their own and the end of the occupation were going up in air, because these superpowers wanted to develop the area without them. And by the way, they cannot develop any entire area, including having a pipeline corridor, if there's unrest, because no bank will finance it. See, so that's what comes into it. They got to wipe them out.
So,
Genocide.
so basically, what I see is happening is the Republicans in Congress want to stop funding the war in Ukraine. But at the same time, is it your belief that uh, uh, there's bipartisan consensus that the war in the Middle East should keep on going? So either way, either who you vote for, Trump or Kamala Harris, there's going to be war anyway. What do you think?
I think I think that there's going to be huge pressure on Netanyahu to have a ceasefire. You see, they're like, while all this whole thing was going on, with Biden dropping out, the news about Gaza was more in the background. And the Israeli forces continue to pummel it. It continues to attack people that had escaped to so-called safe areas, and then they get bombed. I mean, it's just atrocious what's going on. So if the new administration, I mean, the Democrats, are going to have any hope of credibility in the foreign policy area, they've got to somehow enforce a ceasefire. Netanyahu coming at invitation of the Republicans. Who knows how that's going to end up? They're gonna. Well, here's the thing. So they're for him, but they're against the war in Ukraine, and that's from yielding to concerns about so much money being spent on the military when it's needed at home. I understand that. I don't. I part of the isolationist view of the Trump administration, but there's so much about that Ukraine war um, that needs to be investigated, including, what the Trumpers were doing over there. They were all trying to make out. They're all trying to get their hands on the oil in the Eastern Donbass, both sides. It's tricky for both of them. So I see the war there continuing, but I don't know how much longer it can last, especially when the Russians have superior firepower military. But as for Gaza, there has to be a ceasefire. And I think what's happened is that the Israelis feel like they've done enough damage in Gaza that they can begin to go north again. And of course, now what they're targeting is Lebanon. And the whole argument is this is to wipe out Hezbollah, which is much more powerful than Hamas, much more heavily armed. This is really risky business. But there's always been this dream of diminishing Lebanon economically, militarily, and they've done that. I mean, it's a failed state. And now that Israel had invaded Lebanon before, I think that was it, 2006, I think. They invaded, and the whole idea was to push the Palestinians out, get them out of the way. So if you look at my analysis about developing an energy corridor, well, Lebanon's right in it. So is Syria. That both states are broken. I mean, Syria's barely hanging in there. And Lebanon is in a state of almost near collapse. So I guess they feel that maybe they finished the job, so to speak, in Gaza, but now they're looking at Lebanon, and that's not good. That could get very ugly.
Let me make a suggestion. There hasn't been a lot of coverage, or maybe none at all, of what we discussed within the last half hour. I'd like to have you back on Issues That Matter every few weeks to talk about what you just said and how the mainstream media is or is not covering it. Can you do that?
Of course. I mean, I see my role as a truth teller,
Right.
and I've unearthed a lot of information.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll take up the offer.
Okay, so you've been listening to Charlotte Dennett. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Charlotte, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on my show. Have a
Oh,
great
thank you,
day.
Cynthia. Okay, same to you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Cynthia.